Are we looking into a future where it's going to be all agentic only, GTM playbooks? What is the future for B2B selling?
One direction the world might go in is quality over quantity. And in that world, actually, like you need a tool that's going to let you get really laser focused on the highest fit, highest intent accounts, right? There's the other world where it's actually decent quality at scale. So it's going to make things seem like they were written by a human when they aren't.
You've got a brilliant open rate. Give me like a real world example.
I think the old way you would write that email is you would say, hey, whether you're a restaurant software company or you're an HVAC software company, you get the same message. It's in the new world. It's saying, hey, we see you're selling to restaurants. In our database today, we have 600,000 plus restaurants, which is twice as many as ZoomInfo. We track point of sale software, number of locations, and franchise relationships. And we work with this other company you might have heard of. Like there's a very specific problem they have and they see it in the email and then they reply.
That's a brilliant example and such a good template. So if you were talking to a first time founder and you had to give them an overall strategy, how would you suggest they build their GTMs? Hey Riley, welcome to Edbound with Kinner. I'm super excited to have you today in this podcast because what you're building at Orbital is just phenomenal. So let's hear it from you. If you were talking to a VC or a prospective customer, how do you introduce your platform?
Awesome. Well, excited to be here. Thanks for having me. At a super high level with Orbital, we kind of describe ourselves as the ZoomInfo for companies selling to small businesses. The idea is, turns out like over 50% of US GDP is businesses that aren't on LinkedIn, right? And these are businesses that you wouldn't really find if you were on LinkedIn Sales Navigator. And as a result, you wouldn't find if you're in ZoomInfo or Apollo or Lucia or any of these other tools, these kind of traditional prospecting tools. Those tools are really good for the companies who are selling to mid-market or enterprise accounts, right? You're selling to quickly growing startups, or if you're selling to the Fortune 1000, everything you need, you can find in Apollo or any of those tools. What changes is the second you're thinking about, hey, I'm selling to medical spas, or I'm selling to very small accounting practices, or whatever other businesses you might find on Main Street or just around a city that aren't just these traditional like white collar corporations. Typically what happens is it's really hard to find those businesses, right? You're not able to find them in traditional prospecting tools. And so if you go talk to a company that's building, software for gyms or software for plumbers, every single one of those companies kind of goes through the same journey, which is they go get ZoomInfo, they go get Apollo. They realize only like about a third of their target market is in those businesses. And even worse, like the data points they care about around those businesses aren't in those tools, right? There's not news alerts about these businesses. They want to know how many locations, they want to know what point of sale software this business is using, and really specific kind of attributes that obviously aren't one of the top 10 data points that ZoomInfo tracks, right? Because ZoomInfo is tracking data for every business in the world. So they have to have very general data points. So usually from there, those customers will say, okay, these traditional tools don't work. I need to go get an engineer and some team that's going to actually manually go visit websites and clean this data for me. So they'll go scrape a bunch of data. They'll have a labeling team, sometimes in the US, sometimes outside the US. And they'll basically try to build their own kind of database and maintain that database. Orbital does all of that and more in a single platform. And so we basically help companies get their target, like their entire addressable market in a database, enrich all the contacts, and then enrich it further with any data point that is custom to their vertical. So we work with companies selling to HVAC, right? Or companies selling to gyms. If you're selling to gyms, you care about, location count and scheduling software. If you're selling to HVAC companies, you care about what's the, are they using Service Titan or not? Are they commercial or residentially focused? We track now 200 plus different data points around these businesses and use those to help our customers get in touch with and prioritize those accounts.
Wow. That sounds like a really sweet ICP identification and niche. Now, how did you discover that you wanted to sell to these people? Like people who are looking for these signals for these specific industries? Like how did you zero down on your ICP? Because that's like the heart of your business, right?
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, and it's interesting, the deeper we get into this world, it turns out the more and more companies we realize are selling to small businesses. We originally actually came across this problem at our previous job. So my co-founder and I both worked at businesses that sold to offline industries, right? My co-founder worked at Meraki. They were selling to churches. They were selling to schools. They were selling to stadiums, just like a lot of these businesses that, again, you're not going to find really in ZoomInfo. And similarly, I was at a last mile delivery company. And we were also selling to the local businesses on Main Street. And in both cases, what we basically saw is the traditional tools just don't cut it. So these companies had to go build, either buy lists or go build your own in-house thing. And so we kind of saw that problem. And then as sort of AI started to take off, a bit over 2 years ago, what we basically realized is like, for the first time ever, it's actually feasible to go do this because, there's a lot of custom enrichment or things that you need to do to build this business. And without AI, you can't do that, right? You can't just do this on keyword like detection or things like that. And so with AI, it's actually now possible to scrape the amount of data and process the amount of data and the number of kind of data points that we are tracking because you have a much smarter system that can go do it.
So is it pretty much like what Clay does? You could web scrape and look at specific data points like signals about when somebody's maybe cracked another franchise, when somebody is launched in a new city, like a lot of examples that you spoke about. So is it like the enrichment waterfall models that we can build on Clay?
It's similar, but it's sort of out of the box, right? So in Clay, you could go build some of these enrichments. When you log into Orbital, you already see these 200 plus enrichments. So if someone's selling to hotels, we have how many hotel rooms, we have average daily rate of that hotel. Someone's selling to trucking companies, we have enrichment from the FMCSA, which is sort of like the legal filings. So pretty much for every vertical, we already have the enrichments and AI agents built. So the difference, right, when you kind of think about Clay is it's a very raw, powerful tool, but you come in day one in Orbital, you're already running, right? You're already doing everything you want to do. You're not having to go build and hire someone or allocate resources internally. You just have the actual data in, out of the box with Orbital.
Wow. Now that sounds amazing. Now, your target audience, ICP, I assume, are people who are targeting all these smaller businesses. And when you build your GTM, I believe you use your own machine quite a bit, right? I mean, that's like the best position to be in. So let's hear about what are the core pillars of your GTM, because people listening to us, the most important and fun thing is how do you build a business of this scale? And before you answer that question, I have a prelude to this question. And just for people who are listening, some of your customers just using your tools get into double-digit millions are based on what your tech enables them, right? So is that true? I mean, how would you represent the scale? Like, what are some fancy, shiny numbers that have been cracked with your platform?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple different ways we like companies will see ROI or we think about ROI. I mean, in that example you gave, that was the recent, case study we posted on LinkedIn. Basically, companies are valuing Orbital as how many deals close, right? And if you have a fast sales cycle, like that's usually the top metric, just how much revenue has been booked through Orbital. And you sort of think about pre-Orbital, post-Orbital, you can see very clearly, like the lead source is Orbital. You can see how fast those deals are closing. You can see the connect rate, like at each step of the sales process. And usually the metrics are like largely, better. So one is sort of revenue closed. I think the other is really around productivity of sales team. And so like a quote that really stood out to us with a CRO we chatted with a few months ago was he said, hey, like before I had good data, 40% of our calls or our contacts or leads we were going after, we should not have been going after. They were a bad fit. There wasn't a real open business, all these things. He said that's like the same as sending reps home 2 days a week, like 40%, right? They might as well just like work 3 days a week and take a longer weekend because the data is bad. That's the other way companies will look at Orbital, where they say, hey, look, before Orbital, 1 in 2 leads we called wasn't even worth our time, right? They were out of business, or we actually couldn't even integrate with their software. So if we had known what tool they used, we wouldn't have contacted them, or they were too small or too big. Post Orbital, 80% of the leads you're going after are like worthwhile. Maybe you don't win them, right? But it is like a shot on goal you want to take. And so that's the other way folks often look at it. And we have across the board, like in both those areas, like pretty strong case studies.
Wow. Those are some amazing examples. And I mean, if you can get closer to even 40 or 50%, we would consider it's a brilliant number. If you're quoting 80% right leads, I would agree with you that you reduce your churn because you're going after the right audience, and that's literally a superpower, right? I mean, amazing stuff, man. What are the core pillars of GTM that you get to customers through? How does the stack look?
Yeah, I mean, so we do. Yeah, as you sort of guessed, we do use Orbital for this. Orbital has like a few different modules. The first is like mapping your TAM. And so we we have like a very specific target market, right? We specifically need companies that sell to small businesses. And if we get on a call with a company and they're selling to large enterprises, it doesn't matter. Like they're not a good fit, right? We just know like they should go use ZoomInfo, and we aren't trying to like serve that audience. And it actually is a hard thing to qualify because you might go to a website and see, hey, they sell to restaurants. But even if you're selling to restaurants, there are companies that exclusively will sell to like the largest restaurant brands. Again, ZoomInfo is fine when you're talking about selling into McDonald's, right? Or you're selling to Chipotle. Like you can get everything you need in those tools. It's just when you're selling to the other 600,000 restaurants in the US that kind of breaks down. And so we have like a few different really important qualifiers. One is, do you actually sell to small businesses? Two is, are you actually like a B2B business? Because sometimes it's not clear. And the third is like, do you sell to one of our top industries? So we support a wide range of small business industries, but we do particularly well in a handful. And so Orbital actually we have used to go map like any potential business that could be interesting to us and enrich and score it using those data points. And what we got out of that was like 30,000 businesses we should be thinking about, but then really the top like 2,500 businesses that like today we should go all in on finding. And so that sort of has set the stage for how we think about our go-to-market, where now that we have that list, we're sending very general emails, et cetera, to that broader whole like target market. But then we're going really deep in those 2,500 accounts. Our top strategy today is LinkedIn. We post a lot on LinkedIn. We are adding everyone in those target accounts every week. And so over time, we had both people naturally following us because of the content we're posting, as well as we add a lot of people who say, hey, I don't know you personally, but I saw on LinkedIn you posted this thing, like we should chat. And so that's our number one strategy. The second is really cold email. So we've been doing a lot of work to go just have much better kind of, obviously emails that stand out, which is difficult in 2025, but we are able to use Orbital to customize the data and content in those emails as well. And then the third is more of sort of like a partnership play where, we are focused on a pretty specific market. There are some key players, companies and individuals in this market that sell to a similar customer or have relationships. And so we have a lot of sort of partnerships with those companies as well.
So the three pillars, when you said LinkedIn, how many accounts do you use? I want to peel the layers one by one, right?
Yeah.
So let's dive in. When we're talking about LinkedIn, are you using automation with a tool like HeyReach, SmartReach, or any tool that lets multiple people in your teams kind of do this outreach? Or is that only the marketing or the GTM team?
So yeah, for LinkedIn, it's mainly content creation. So we are doing some messaging and stuff like that, but the number one lead source for us is actually people coming inbound who saw us on LinkedIn. So the main playbook there is we're posting 3 days a week. My co-founder we're posting both about really specific content relevant to ICP. So, how should you quantify the size of a business in your CRM, which is something that only RevOps leaders are thinking about if you are selling to small businesses. So we have both very specific relevant content, but then also more general content that will just keep people interested and engaged in like a broader kind of audience before they maybe even are thinking about the problem we solve. So that's like the LinkedIn piece. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. And content writing, how much of an AI do you like breadth? And I mean, you mentioned 3 times a week, right? And you're not using too many accounts, but are you using any AI to create content, or is it just a helper?
We don't use any AI on the commenting side. We've just found it's like really, it's really clear, really fast when that's the case.
They're boring. I mean, the way they just repeat. I mean, you can fine tune the prompts, but you're right. I mean, you catch it and you feel like it's polluting the comment section, right? So
yeah, and we say it on all of our posts. Like it's so clear when someone's just like an AI. So we don't use that. We also don't. I mean, sometimes for brainstorming or like for hooks or stuff, we'll play with ChatGPT, but we also haven't found a lot of success. We've obviously tried to write LinkedIn content with AI. It's not really there yet from what we've seen. It just feels like, I think right now there is like, people are like kind of on guard for like detecting AI use, especially in like public facing forums like LinkedIn. And so we've tried a lot of the different tools there, but haven't found something that lets us like scale more. So it is something we're writing on our side.
Okay. Fantastic. No, that kind of explains the fantastic posts that come from you. And I mean, I've loved some of the content, and I think it's fantastic. But I get it. Any specific tool that connects your LinkedIn with your cold outreach? Because cold outreach is the second one, and I've seen some AI agents that can kind of do that. Have you played with anything like that?
We are using like the whole Instantly stack to basically send our emails today. That those are not connected together. So basically, we have Orbital feeding data into Instantly. We have a number of different campaigns in Instantly that then are just sending out emails, and then that gets forwarded into our actual Google Workspace accounts.
All right. So Instantly is where the entire infra for your cold emails is built, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Any how many domains, by the way? Because I know like people go ballistic with email. I've met people who were doing like almost 1 million emails a month. So what's kind of the tune that we are talking about at Orbital here?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have on the order of, I want to say it's somewhere between 25 and 50 domains. 25 domains.
And sending roughly about 30 to 50 messages a day, or have you been able to push that?
Yeah, per inbox. No, we aren't going over the recommended amount there.
Yeah. Okay. No, fantastic. And I mean, these two kind of really tie well with your methods where you could give out lead magnets and content, where, you know, what I like to call that strategy is Edbound strategy of, you know, educating customers. So anything on that front? I mean, do you see that happening in the future?
Yeah, it's something where the content piece is the piece that we're now starting to work on. It's just a question of time and priority, but it's definitely there's a lot of cool content we can create from the data we now have in our platform, right?
Yeah.
We have insight into a lot of industries, how many companies are in those industries, things like that, which is definitely pretty relevant for our audience. So we're starting to think about content there.
Yeah, I mean, some of the data points you just spoke about, you know, 600,000 restaurants in the US, and you're not talking about the Chipotles or the McDonald's. And I think you'll have some gold mines, man. I believe you'll be able to create some awesome content. But okay, fantastic. Now let's get on to the third piece of this. And third piece that you mentioned about is the partners. So what's the playbook there? I mean, are these just platforms online that are able to just push your content or your signups like trials through their integrations, or how does the partner playbook look?
Yeah, I mean, you know, being upfront, we're just starting to think through it and just starting to invest in it. So it's the most nascent of the three. But yeah, I mean, I think the idea is like there are a lot of people or companies who are connected to vertical software, as an example, right? Vertical software would be, you know, any company that's building software for X industry, software for restaurants, software for scrap metal recycling yards, software for accounting practices. That whole ecosystem, there's, you know, it's a small world. A lot of the founders know each other. A lot of the tools selling into that ecosystem know each other. And so we're still kind of figuring it out. But the idea is that, you know, we have a hit list of 2,500 accounts. It's not that many, right? Like we have a much larger TAM, but we have like a pretty focused list, and that lets you go and invest more time if you are going after a smaller list of accounts. And so we're still kind of figuring it out. But the idea is that if we can have people who are deep in that world, who are very excited about Orbital, help support with introductions or with getting the word out, then that will help us, you know, kind of our brand in the space. But it's the hardest because the others are very clear levers, right? Post more, send more emails, like, and you know, you send more emails or improve, you know, the relevance of those emails, you're going to see better reply rates. Like this is much more of like a softer thing. So we still haven't quite cracked it, but we know it's going to be like important for our strategy moving forward.
No, I think you're right. Like I think those are the levers. But like I said, one of the most powerful things that I have found out people do that with inbound and outbound, and especially LinkedIn content, is when you start layering it with the right content messaging, you qualify your audience in a much finer way.
Yeah.
So your conversion rates towards the bottom of the funnel start getting better. You know, you might not change your top of the funnel too much, though it starts tapering a little bit and directionally tapering in a very good way. But your bottom funnel starts getting better because you're talking more to more relevant people, like you know, people who respond to messaging that's industry specific and ICP specific. I think you see magic there, and I think both your first and second methods would start getting better when you do that. But I think I agree with what you're saying, is that any good GTM playbook is going to be multi-threaded, right? I mean, it's got to have multiple layers. And that brings me to the question of SEO. I mean, are you seeing a lot of traffic driving in through SEO, or is that something that you haven't kind of invested a lot of time and money into?
It's an opportunity we're very well aware of, but we haven't invested in it yet. And yeah, it just comes down to priorities. And as I'm sure you guys have seen on your side too, like, there's a million channels you can spend time on. Like even three is a lot to kind of refine, because you kind of see like, disproportionate, like success gets even easier as you go deeper on a given channel, right? Once you iterate and kind of figure it out. I think we're staying focused on these three to start. But yeah, I think we'll definitely build more out on that side soon.
Yeah, yeah. No, sounds like it. I think it's already a great stack, and I think your approach is kind of super focused, which is rare to come across. And I think you're right. As you go deeper and get better playbooks, and you'll discover insights that people on the periphery won't be able to kind of see. So I have a question there around your sales machine. Do people really want to listen to demos? Like do they want demos before they convert usually, or what's the ratio between automated conversion, your PLG, and then, how, like, do you have sales motion happening?
So we're launching self-serve in the next month or so. Up till now, everything is through like our team. And I think that sort of makes sense for two reasons. One, like, we still are learning a lot from those conversations, and also learning how to educate folks or talk about it, because someone might come in with a very different symptom than actually what the problem is. And we're able to help educate them, how they could use Orbital and understand their problem. But then also, we just like it takes a lot to build out a self-serve product, not just that you can log into, but that you can actually log into, understand, and get going without any sort of human touch point. So up to now, it's all been through our team. And I think, the industry we're in, like ultimately a lot of the initial like test or initial evaluation is around just the data that they're going to see. And so if we can actually tailor a demo to your use case, your vertical, right? If you're selling to restaurants, like you should be thinking and seeing restaurant data, and we should be talking about the attributes that we know your vertical cares about, not something that another vertical cares about, right? That we find goes a long ways in kind of showcasing like both the product and our team's know-how is built around their specific use case, right? You're talking ZoomInfo, and ZoomInfo is not talking about, what's the point of sale software they're not saying, hey, you care about, the franchise relationship and point of sale software and number of locations. They're just saying, hey, here's ZoomInfo, right? And so the more we can tailor that message to the vertical shows sort of our knowledge of the space.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. And it makes a lot of sense to kind of approach it with that focused, laser focus, to be honest. I mean, you're trying to differentiate yourself from the big boys there. I mean, ZoomInfo is what, 3.2 billion or something like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, it changes a bit, but yeah. It's exactly in that area.
Yeah, no, that's profound, man. I mean, I understand where you're kind of looking at, and a lot of founders kind of miss that, and that's a lesson that I learned quite late. I mean, to focus deeper. But yeah, let's quickly understand from a data perspective and ICP perspective. Is it only the US that you or people, I mean, your ICP would be anybody selling to the US small businesses, or are you looking to expand your data sets and offerings beyond the US geography? Is that on the cards soon?
Yeah, we already support outside the US for a lot of verticals, and a lot of our customers, we work with like a number of public companies, and they all operate, globally and use Orbital to do that today. But we are still mainly focused on US-based companies. They could be selling internationally, but we haven't yet gone after companies that are, based outside the US and just selling to international businesses. I'm sure we'll get there, but it's just easier when we already know the landscape and everything in the US.
Yeah. Let's change gears and talk about AI a little bit. I know you guys have kind of built quite a bit of it into Orbital, and all the enrichments are AI powered. But where the industry is heading, I think nobody is really being able to guess, what's going to happen even, let's say, 18 months later. Is there any exciting development or something in the pipeline that you guys are working on, or in general in the industry? Are we looking into a future where it's going to be all agentic only, like the entire GTM playbooks and, data enrichments? But what is it that the future looks like for B2B selling?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and one we're thinking about every day, as you would expect. I think, the real answer is like, we don't know exactly where it's going to go. And so we're building a platform that can support different directions, right? one direction the world might go in is quality over quantity. And in that world, actually, like you need a tool that's going to let you get really laser focused on the highest fit, highest intent accounts, right? And Orbital's really good at that, right? That's how we're able to say, hey, here are the 2,500 accounts that we should really focus on instead of the 30,000 or the 100,000 that maybe we could email. And we can get even more granular. Like we have it down to like, here are the top 100, here are the top 250, right? So, in that world, you're kind of saying, hey, AI is going to help make sense of the world, prioritize, and be really smart about where you spend your time. Because ultimately, maybe in this world, you're going to need to go meet them in person, right? There's so much noise. Like in this world, maybe you say the playbook or winning playbook is you're going to send really expensive gifts. You're going to fly out to meet them. You're going to know what conferences they're going to, get in front of them in person. And Orbital supports that. There's the other world where it's actually decent quality at scale. So instead of really high quality, like over quantity, there's like high quantity with decent quality. Because with AI, obviously, you can now personalize pretty well, right? You can now make things seem kind of like maybe they were written by a human when they aren't. You can do that on the order of hundreds of thousands. And even in that world, I think Orbital is really powerful because you can segment your customers really granularly with our platform. You could say, hey, we see you use this competitor today. Here's how we're different. We see you are a 5-location, medical spa, and here's a relevant case study of the company down the street from you that's also 5 locations. And like that feels kind of personal, right? And so in that world, we also, I think, are well positioned. And to be honest, like I think the longer I'm in sales and sales tech, like there will be general trends, but I also think what is consistently the case is that everyone's going to be doing different things and trying different things, and different playbooks will work for different companies. Because if every single person was doing AI calling, then obviously the people who found that first are going to go find the next thing. And once they find the next thing and people are going to go into that, they're going to go find the next thing. And so I think it's easy to talk about these as like, is the world going to be this or that? And I think the answer will be based on your unit economics, your product, your motion, your market. You'll probably pick a playbook that is working for that. And it's going to work for a year and then it's going to change because the world's changing pretty fast.
Yeah. I mean, it's mind-boggling, the speed really of
yeah,
how
it's crazy.
It's all evolving. And considering that, if you were talking to a first-time founder trying to sell to businesses and you can't just recommend Orbital, but you had to give them an overall strategy, how would you kind of suggest they should build their GTM strategy? What would be the steps that they should take?
Yeah, and I think there's sort of like pre-product market fit, post-product market fit. Pre-product market fit, it's just about hacking, like being hacky and hustling. Like I would say for that founder who hasn't really found a product that can repeat it, like with a consistent ICP and a consistent message, honestly, there's no silver bullet or playbook. It's really about how can you get 1 customer, then how can you get 5, then how can you get 10? And I think that motion is much more relationship building, referrals, that sort of thing. I think once you start to find something that's working, in my mind, one, I do think there's a lot of value to being a lot smarter about who you target. Like we used to be in a world where you would go on ZoomInfo and just download a list and say, hey, we sell to startups. We're going to go download every startup, right? I think that is like it's very difficult today to run just like very general outreach to a very general audience. Like you basically need to be a lot smarter about who you're targeting. Like it's specific. It's not just startups. It's startups who have, at least 5 employees. Like if you're selling overseas, like, and, international EOR like software, it's like, cool. We need to not just target any startup. It's startups that have at least 5 employees outside the US who recently fundraised and, whatever in this vertical, because we have a lot of, financial services companies. So we're going to sell just in that vertical. Like the second you're kind of being a lot smarter there, it both lets you go deeper as well as just have messaging that clicks. Like all the time when we get email replies, it's because they say, hey, I saw you mentioned this very specific data point you have that's relevant for our vertical. But if we aren't customizing that email by vertical, then we wouldn't be able to do that, right? We would just be saying, hey, we have a database of 200 plus, a library of 200 plus enrichments. No. Like you have to list the 3 that matter for that customer. And so
give me an example, like something that really blew the mind of prospective customer. You got a brilliant open rate. Give me like a real world example. You don't have to name the company, but let's just hear about
I think, so like restaurants is one of our verticals, right? I think the old way you would write that email is you would say, hey, whether you're a restaurant software company or you're an HVAC software company, you get the same message. It says, hey, Orbital helps businesses sell to small businesses.
Yeah.
In the new world, it's saying, hey, we see you're selling to restaurants. In our database today, we have 600,000 plus restaurants, which is twice as many in ZoomInfo. We track point of sale software, number of locations, and franchise relationships. And we work with this other company you might have heard of. And that, like, the person will often reply saying, I need better POS software coverage, right? Like, there's a very specific problem they have and they see it in the email and then they reply. Or we don't have it, like, we use ZoomInfo, we don't have enough of our TAM, like, we're interested in that. So I think that's sort of the granularity you want to get to.
Yeah, that's a brilliant example and such a good template. So what we can achieve with Orbital is that email that you just mentioned about. Do you get that written within the platform, or the data gives me those data points and then I kind of use an enrichment or writing tool in between the Instantly and Orbital data? Is that what happens?
You just would connect it directly into Instantly. But it's not, what our platform's doing is not just the writing level. Like, to get to that, you actually first need to say, here's our target market. Here's how we segment. It's really the segment. Like, it's finding that it's prioritizing it, and then it's segmentation, right? Restaurants, like, we have to know their restaurant software, not, plumber software, in order to customize it. And so it's sort of that end-to-end process. And the last step is like, what does the email say? But I guess we see, like, even before that, like, you're putting these people into campaigns and to, like, pretty specific segments. So you can write, like, very, kind of targeted messaging.
Yeah. And do you get customers who don't have an idea about how do you craft such messages? Because I assume a lot of companies would not know. When they look into data, your sales guy or your team would really help them granularly target the audience they should be going after. Does that happen quite often?
Yeah, we kind of meet customers where they are, right? Some companies we're talking to have the most sophisticated, built out custom tooling, thoughtful messaging, really clearly defined ICP. And then on the other end, we might talk to a company where they're like, hey, we've been inbound for the last, like, few years. It's working. We want to start setting up outbound. We've never had to critically think about who to target because it's just been inbound. Like, we want to use Orbital, and based on that, we'll help coach them. And also, like, we often will, our customers know best often. And so if we can introduce, like, a prospect or a customer to another customer, we often do that as well.
Wow. No, makes a lot of sense, man. But I think these questions that I just asked you, they kind of line up the entire journey of how a customer goes and, how do you acquire these customers and, what happens. Super awesome. I look forward to meet you in person.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Lovely talking to you, Riley. Thank you so much for sharing all that.
Yeah, thanks for reaching out. See you guys.
Cheers.